As someone with limited space and even more limited budget, I base my game collection on a simple principle. Is the cover art funny? Lowest possible effort for a commercial product will never not be funny. Cheap games that are basically scams released well after a console has already been replaced by its successor will never not be funny. Phoenix Games, YouTube's favorite bad game punching bag, will never not be funny. Now, as someone who's gone on record to say there's no such thing as a bad game, my opinion of Phoenix Games has been, I don't know. I don't recall playing anything released by them before. I do know that they're more a publisher than a developer, and when it comes to bad games, if you're gonna blame someone, blame the publisher. And as a publisher, Phoenix Games is widely derided for being the very definition of shameless. And now that I've played All-Star Action, yeah, that reputation may be warranted. What we've got here is a 2-disc compilation, with half of the games centered around racing, such as Superbike GP, Battle Trucks, Turbo Race 2, the sequel, and Top Speed Rally. As you can plainly see with your very own eyes, these are completely different games and not just the exact same game with the exact same user interface and sound effects and pulling from the same small pool of tracks with the only difference being the vehicle selection and minor physics changes. That would just be silly. The other half is a collection of water sports developed by excellent logo haver Thayer GFX. We've got surfing, windsurfing, bodyboarding, and jet skiing. Absolutely, definitely 4 completely distinct virtual interactive experiences, and not at all just the exact same game with the exact same user interface and sound effects and using the same levels and gameplay. That would just be silly! In fact, these games are so legit that Phoenix released them again in the same year as All-Star Water Sports, now containing huge upgrades such as longer loading times, a different UI, and for some reason, licensed music by The Penetrators. Not the San Diego punk band that shows up on all the Google results, but the surf instrumental band from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, USA. Phoenix would do essentially the same thing with the racing games and call it 5-star racing. They would have gone with All-Star Racing, but they were beaten to the punch by Midas Interactive, a company started by one of Phoenix's founders. We'll come back to them in a bit, so remember that name. But All-Star Action has one more game on the list. A total outlier. Something that is neither motor nor water sport. This is Power Riders.
Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go.
On the surface, Power Riders is a futuristic mech racing game with combat elements. Now, you'd think being a part of the 2003 Phoenix Games release All-Star Action, there'd be nothing below the surface. But let's take a look at the game mode, shall we? Time Trial is just that. Get the fastest lap on one of the 6 tracks. Use boost when you can. Simple, straightforward. Crush Carnival, awesome band name by the way, is a kind of combat challenge. Select the amount of drones and then use your mech's attacks to damage and destroy them as quickly as possible while you race down the track. And then Battle Mode is the real meat of the game. You race against 3 AI opponents, but it's not a straight race. Instead of trying to get to the finish line first, you're all gathering points. You get points by doing damage to your opponents, crossing checkpoints before them, and most crucially, holding on to the ball. The ball is just a status you get from crossing a checkpoint first, and that you can lose by getting attacked, and then regain by attacking whoever is carrying the ball. Then it's all about managing the tracks, which contain obstacles and sections with less grip, and managing your mech, which can lose its arms and therefore its ability to attack, and be destroyed entirely if you get too much damage. It's quite in depth, and there's several more abilities if you bother to read the manual. The game has 6 tracks of increasing complexity and a whole boatload of characters to choose from, each with their own visually unique mech and stats. And can we talk about the characters, please? I need to talk about the characters. I'm gonna talk about the characters now. In order of selection, we've got Ray Break Thunder, Suzune Takajo, Wells McLeod, Holm Hub Athwun, Michael Keith, Natasha Stale, Peter Crow, who truly looks like a Peter Crow, Ashu Junryu, Young Savarni, Rachel Lean, and Surly Grease. Scoppany Rose, which is definitely what I'll name my first child. Jimny Hornets, which is what I'll name my second child. Dan Ryujin, Ellen McLeod, who you'd be forgiven for thinking is related to Wells, but look, she capitalizes the L. We round off with Ramondi Gehring, Stefan Milton, and last and certainly not least, Adis Jake Terria, whose mech is truly gargantuan and takes up all of the screen. These are some Mobile Suit Gundam-ass names, and they each have a character portrait, and there's so many of them, and they're in a game that's kinda okay, which leads to the big question, what the hell is this doing surrounded by bottom-of-the-barrel reskin games? How is this, like the racing and the surfing, not merely an asset flip of itself? Why are the different modes not split up into different games on the disc? Sure, it's not a great game, but it has enough depth to it that I could see this easily getting its very own disc release. And it did. In Japan. In 1997, 6 years before All-Star Action. This is Defeat Lightning. Developed and published by D-Cruise, a company I know nothing about other than that they also made fantasy-themed breakout clone Sorcerer's Maze, also known as Prismland or Prismland Story. Aside from the animated intro, Defeat Lightning is the exact same game as Power Riders, except that it also has... oh yes. Yes! Yes! A story mode! I love a racing game with a story mode. Oh, but it's all in Japanese, of course. I'll never be able to understand the deep motivation of Scoppany Rose and Jimny Hornets like this. If only someone had had the vision to bring this game to the West in its complete form. Oh, what's that? It did come to the West in its complete form? In 2001? By Midas Interactive? Yeah, apparently Midas, besides peddling the same low-effort garbage as Phoenix Games, would also occasionally localize obscure Japanese releases for the European market. Defeat Lightning became the creatively titled Future Racer, and while they kept the original's use of the circle button as confirm, which I'm sure was an intentional nod to the game's Japanese origins and not something they just forgot to fix, they did commit the great sin of gamer censorship by removing Michael Keith's iconic middle finger. How dare they? But yeah, the story mode is all here, consisting of lightly animated art that I'm sure illuminates the depth these characters were written with. I'm assuming there's a cutscene at the beginning and at the very end for every character like a fighting game, maybe with some flavor text in between the races, but I'm not gonna play through all 5 leagues to find out, let alone with every single character. So what happened here is Defeat Lightning was released only in Japan. 4 years later, Midas discovered it and localized it for Europe, and then 2 years after that, Phoenix stripped it of its story mode and added it to All-Star Action. Power Riders is literally just the training mode of Future Racer with all the tracks and characters unlocked by default. What I'm most curious about here is what the licensing situation between Midas and Phoenix was, how intermixed they were as companies, and how legal it was for Phoenix to just remove the name and logo of the original developer entirely. For whatever it's worth, D-Cruise was already defunct by the time All-Star Action was released, but it's still a scummy thing to do. But that's Power Riders, aka Future Racer, aka Defeat Lightning. Again, as a game, it's not great. It sits somewhere between Starwinder the Ultimate Space Race and Running High on the spectrum of unusual futuristic PlayStation racers, though it doesn't reach the narrative or musical heights that either of those do. But it's a curious game, even more so for its inclusion in a Phoenix Games compilation of garbage, and, as I keep saying over and over, it's once again proof that there is so much treasure to be found deep within the piles of gaming trash. And as your favorite intrepid explorer of this trash, I just had to take a moment to tell you about it.
Danger, danger.